All right, so maybe you've heard of this book, The Art of Seduction, but you're not really sure what it's all about.
Yeah, it's got a kind of provocative title, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like a dating guide or something more?
Well, let me tell you, it's definitely not your typical dating advice.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's more like a deep dive into seduction as a form of power.
Power.
Yeah, like how to influence and persuade people, not just in romantic relationships, but in all areas of life.
Interesting. I guess that explains why it's written by Robert Greene. He's kind of known for those kind of books, right?
Exactly. He's the author of The 48 Laws of Power and Mastery. So he's definitely interested in the dynamics of power and strategy.
Okay, so we're talking about seduction as a strategy.
Exactly. And Greene uses all these fascinating examples from history like Cleopatra, Casanova, JFK.
Wow, those are some pretty powerful figures.
Right. He shows how they used seduction to get what they wanted, to gain influence, to achieve their goals.
I've started to see why this book is so controversial.
Yeah, I mean, the word seduction itself can be a little loaded.
For sure. Some people might hear that and think, oh, this is about manipulation.
Right. And I think that's a valid concern. But Greene's approach is more nuanced than that.
So it's not just about like tricks and techniques to get people to do what you want.
No, it's more about understanding the psychology of desire, how to create attraction, how to make yourself irresistible.
Okay, but how is that different from manipulation?
Well, I think the key difference is intention.
Intention.
Yeah, are you using these techniques to exploit people? Or are you using them to create genuine connections, to build relationships, to inspire and motivate others?
So it's more about influence than manipulation.
Exactly. And that's why I think this book is so valuable, even if you're not trying to seduce anyone in the romantic sense.
So how does this book actually work? What's the format like?
Well, it's divided into 9 sections. Each one focuses on a different type of seducer, like the siren, the rake, the ideal lover.
That sounds kind of like a personality test.
It kind of is. Greene gives you all these historical examples, and then he breaks down the psychology behind each type of seducer.
So you can see yourself in these characters.
Exactly. And you can start to understand your own seductive strengths and weaknesses.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but I gotta be honest. I'm still a little wary of this whole seduction thing. It just feels kind of icky.
I get it. It can definitely be a touchy subject. But I think Greene is very clear that seduction is not about being dishonest or manipulative.
So how does he define seduction then?
He describes it as a game of psychology.
The game.
Yeah, it's about understanding the rules of attraction and using them to your advantage.
Okay, but what if you don't want to play games? What if you just want to be yourself?
Well, I think Greene would argue that we're all playing the game whether we realize it or not.
What do you mean?
We're all constantly sending out signals, trying to attract people and experiences into our lives.
I guess that's true.
So the question is, are you going to do it consciously or unconsciously? Are you going to be a master of the game or a pawn?
Okay, I see your point. So this book is about becoming more aware of how we're all seducing each other all the time.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your own seductive power and using it for good.
I like that. That sounds a lot less icky than I was expecting.
Right. It's about becoming the most magnetic and irresistible version of yourself.
All right, I'm sold. I'm ready to dive into the art of seduction.
Great. Well, before we do that, I think it's important to address the elephant in the room.
The elephant.
Yeah, the ethical concerns surrounding this book.
Right, because let's be real, some of the techniques in here could definitely be used for bad.
Absolutely. And I think that's something to be mindful of as we go through this. But I also believe that knowledge is power.
So by understanding these techniques, we can protect ourselves from being manipulated.
Exactly. We can also use them to create more positive and fulfilling relationships in all areas of our lives.
Okay, I like that perspective.
Yeah,
So let's dive in and see what the art of seduction has to offer.
sounds good. Let's do it.
But before we go too deep, I'm curious what you thought of Greene's writing style. Is it a dry read or is it actually enjoyable?
Oh no, it's definitely not dry. Greene is a master storyteller. He weaves together history, psychology, philosophy.
So it's like a page turner.
Exactly. And he makes these complex ideas really accessible and engaging.
Awesome. Well, then let's get started. I'm ready to learn the secrets of seduction.
All right, let's do it.
But before we jump into those secrets, I think it's important to set some ground rules.
Ground rules.
Yeah, like we've talked about the potential for manipulation here. So
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to approach this book with a critical eye.
Absolutely. We're not here to endorse any unethical behavior.
Right, we're here to explore these ideas, understand them, and then decide for ourselves how we want to apply them to our own lives.
Exactly. So let's keep that in mind as we dive in.
Agreed. Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly is seduction, according to Robert Greene?
Well, Greene defines seduction as the strategic use of charm, persuasion, and allure to win someone over.
Okay, so it's not just about physical attraction.
No, it's much more than that. It's about creating a connection on a deeper level.
And how do you do that?
Well, that's what this book is all about.
So he gives you like a step-by-step guide.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
It's more about understanding the principles of seduction and then applying them to your own unique situation.
Okay, so it's like a framework for seduction.
Exactly. And Greene provides all these fascinating examples from history to show how these principles have been used in the past.
Like those figures we talked about earlier, Cleopatra, Casanova, JFK.
Exactly. He shows how they used seduction to achieve incredible things.
I'm starting to see how this book could be really valuable, even if you're not trying to become the next Cleopatra.
Right. It's about understanding how to influence people, how to persuade them, how to get them to see things your way.
Okay, so it's like a power move.
In a way, yes. But it's also about much more than that. It's about creating genuine connections, building relationships, inspiring others.
I'm intrigued, but also a little skeptical. Can you really learn how to seduce someone from a book?
Well, I think the answer is yes and no.
What do you mean?
I mean, the book can definitely teach you the techniques, but it's up to you to apply them in an authentic and ethical way.
So it's not about becoming some kind of manipulative mastermind.
No, it's about becoming the best version of yourself, the version that's most attractive and magnetic.
Okay, I can get behind that. So let's dive into the art of seduction and see what secrets we can uncover.
Sounds good to me. Okay, so we've been talking about this whole idea of seduction as a strategy and as a form of power.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how it can apply to more than just romantic relationships.
Right. Like we talked about in the last part, Greene uses examples from history to show how these techniques can be used in all areas of life.
Yeah, like Cleopatra using her charm and allure to gain political power.
Exactly. And Casanova using his wit and charisma to win over countless lovers.
Okay, so those are some pretty extreme examples. But how does this apply to the average person?
Well, I think one of the key takeaways from this book is that seduction is all about creating a certain aura.
An aura.
Yeah, like a vibe that draws people to you, that makes you seem interesting and desirable.
Okay, so how do you create that aura?
Well, Greene talks about a lot of different techniques, but one of the most important is creating a sense of mystery.
Mystery.
Yeah, like don't reveal everything about yourself all at once. Hold back a little. Let people wonder about you.
I guess that makes sense. If you're too predictable, people might get bored.
Exactly. And boredom is the enemy of seduction.
Okay, so create a sense of mystery.
Get it.
Got it.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, another important technique is to cultivate a sense of confidence.
Confidence.
Yeah, like believing yourself and your own worth. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there.
I can see how that would be attractive. People are drawn to confidence.
Exactly. And it's not just about physical appearance. It's about having a strong sense of self and knowing what you want.
Okay, so mystery and confidence. What else?
Well, Greene also talks about the importance of being a good listener.
A good listener.
Yeah, like actually paying attention to what people are saying and making them feel heard.
I guess that makes sense. People like to feel like they're being understood.
Exactly. And when you make someone feel understood, you create a connection with them.
And that connection is the foundation of seduction.
Exactly. It's about building rapport and trust.
Okay, so we've got mystery, confidence, listening. Any other tips?
Well, Greene also emphasizes the importance of being playful and having a sense of humor.
Playful and humorous.
Yeah, like don't take yourself too seriously. Be able to laugh at yourself and have fun.
I can see how that would be disarming.
Yeah.
People are drawn to those who are lighthearted and easygoing.
Exactly. And it shows that you're not afraid to be vulnerable.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, like letting people see your flaws and imperfections.
I wouldn't have thought that vulnerability would be attractive.
Well, it can be if it's done in the right way.
How so?
Well, it shows that you're not afraid to be real, that you're not trying to be perfect.
And people appreciate authenticity.
Exactly. They want to connect with someone who's genuine and relatable.
Okay, so mystery, confidence, listening, playfulness, humor, vulnerability. That's a lot to keep in mind.
It is. But the good news is that these are all qualities that you can cultivate over time.
So you don't have to be born with them.
No, it's all about practice and self-awareness.
Okay, so let's say you've mastered all these techniques. How do you know if it's working?
Well, one of the best indicators is how people respond to you.
Like if they're drawn to you?
Exactly. If they seem interested in what you have to say, if they want to spend time with you.
Okay, so it's all about reading the signals.
Exactly. And paying attention to the subtle cues.
This is starting to sound a little bit like mind reading.
Well, in a way it is. It's about understanding human psychology and being able to anticipate how people will react.
I can see how that could be powerful. But it also sounds a little bit dangerous.
It can be if it's used in the wrong way.
So how do you make sure you're using these techniques for good?
Well, I think the key is to always be respectful of other people's boundaries.
Boundaries.
Yeah, like don't push someone to do something they're not comfortable with.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
So seduction is about creating attraction and connection, but it's also about respecting people's autonomy.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
I'm starting to see why this book is so controversial.
Yeah, it's definitely not for everyone.
But for those who are interested in understanding the psychology of attraction and persuasion.
It can be a really valuable tool.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. But I want to go back to something you said earlier about creating an aura of mystery.
Yeah, what about it?
Well, I'm curious how you actually do that in practice.
It's about being a little bit elusive. Not always being available, not giving away too much information about yourself.
So like playing hard to get?
Not necessarily. It's more about creating a sense of intrigue, making people want to know more about you.
I guess that makes sense. You don't want to seem too eager.
Exactly. And you don't want to be predictable.
Okay, so be mysterious, be confident, be a good listener, be playful, be vulnerable, and be respectful of boundaries.
That's a pretty good summary.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It can be, but it's also a lot of fun.
Okay, so if our listeners are up for the challenge, The Art of Seduction might be worth checking out.
I would definitely recommend it.
But as you said earlier, it's not for everyone.
Right. It's a book that requires a certain level of maturity and self-awareness.
So if you're looking for a quick fix or a set of manipulative techniques, this is not the book for you.
Exactly. This book is about understanding the deeper principles of seduction and applying them in an ethical and authentic way. So we've talked a lot about the ins and outs of the art of seduction.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I'm really starting to see how this book can be valuable, even if you're not trying to, like, seduce someone in a romantic sense.
Right. It's really about understanding those deeper dynamics of power and influence.
Exactly, and how we can use those dynamics to achieve our goals and create more fulfilling relationships in all areas of our lives.
Exactly. It's like having the secret knowledge about human behavior that most people aren't even aware of.
And that knowledge can be incredibly empowering.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that makes this book so fascinating. It's like a window into the human psyche.
It really makes you think differently about how you interact with the world.
Exactly. And how the world interacts with you.
You know, one thing that keeps coming back to me is that idea of self-awareness that we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
Greene really emphasizes the importance of understanding yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your patterns.
Right. It's like he's saying, know thyself, but in a more strategic way.
Exactly. And once you know yourself, you can start to control how you present yourself to the world.
And how you influence the people around you.
It's like you're becoming the architect of your own life.
I love that analogy.
And I think that's ultimately what this book is all about. It's about taking control of your own destiny.
And using your seductive powers for good.
So if our listeners are looking for a book that will challenge them, provoke them, and maybe even change the way they see the world, The Art of Seduction might be worth checking out.
I would definitely agree with that. It's not an easy read, but it's a rewarding one.
And even if you don't agree with everything Greene says,
Mhm.
I think it's valuable to understand these concepts and how they're being used all around us.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. And the more you know about human behavior, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the complexities of life.
Well said. So that wraps up our deep dive into The Art of Seduction.
I hope our listeners found it insightful.
We certainly did, and we hope it sparked some interesting thoughts and conversations.
And who knows, maybe it's even inspired some of you to become a little bit more seductive.
In a good way, of course.
Always in a good way.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and remember, the most seductive person in the room is often the one who's most comfortable in their own skin.
And who knows how to use their powers for good.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next Deep Dive.